Hello and welcome to America Innovates, presented by Forbes and America250. We are excited to spend today with you here at Fort Mason. As we begin, we would like to take a moment to thank our partner, America250, for their support in co-hosting this amazing experience. Lastly, we would also like to remind you to download our event app, eAtlas Adventures to Go, for a fun scavenger hunt and trivia throughout the space. Now for our panel, Energy, Industry, and Manufacturing, please welcome Rodney Brooks, founder and CTO, Robust.ai and roboticist, Lance Hastings, president and CEO, California Manufacturers and Technology Association, Lonnie Johnson, rocket scientist and inventor, and moderator, Carrie A. Dolan, assistant managing editor, Forbes.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. We are here today at Fort Mason to celebrate Innovators and, of course, America's 250th birthday. And we have here on the panel two of the greatest living innovators in the country, according to Forbes. We've got Rodney Brooks, right to my next to me here on my left, who is best known probably for, he's a roboticist who's founded a number of companies, including one that you may know that makes the Roomba, the little vacuum that goes around your house and finds dust bunnies and dog hair all by itself. Next to him is Lance Hastings, who's our policy expert as the head of California Manufacturing and Technology Association. And then on my far left, Lonnie Johnson, who is a NASA engineer who, along the way, in maybe an unexpected twist, came up with the Super Soaker water gun. So he's going to talk about how a space scientist became a water gun inventor. So, gentlemen, let's start with talking about your innovations and what led to them. Rodney, you were born in Australia. So, given that we're talking about the United States and our 250th birthday, what brought you here to the United States?
Artificial intelligence. I always tell the story, I started as a math major and ended up being a vacuum cleaner salesman, so you know the transition. So I had started I did a master's thesis in Australia on machine learning back in 1976 and 77.
That was early for machine learning, wow.
It was, but the real action was happening at Stanford and MIT and Carnegie Mellon, so I applied to all three, managed to get into Stanford and went there, and then worked on government-funded research for 4 years.
And this was back in the late 70s that you came?
77 to 81, in computer vision.
And there was basically, at the time, the United States was more advanced than any Australian university in terms of machine learning?
All of AI.
Yeah.
It was really happening in the US.
Wow. So talk a little bit about the iRobot, which is the company that you've co-founded that makes the Roomba. What led to the founding of that? That was back in 1990, is that right?
In 1990, Colin Angle and Helen Grainer, two of my students, and I founded it. And
these were students from MIT?
From MIT. Mm-hmm. And we worked on lots of things. We had 14 failed business models through the 90s. And then in 2002, we had two successes. The Roomba was released, but also at that point, we were putting robots with the US military in Iraq and Afghanistan for roadside bombs. So we had 6,500 robots there. Wow. And that meant people could send a robot to poke a bomb instead of putting a bomb suit on and going with a stick to poke the bomb.
Wow. So it took from 1990 until 2002 to get the Roombas out.
It was 14 failed business models doing other stuff.
Okay.
And
So it wasn't just that.
Came along that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what made you, what was were you sitting around one night, let's have a robot do the vacuuming from now on? I'm curious what that aha moment was for that.
Yeah, I had written about it back in 1987.
The idea.
The idea, and then people would just ask us all the time, when are you going to build a robot vacuum cleaner? When are you going to build a robot vacuum cleaner? So, and we were not the first. Electrolux in Sweden had one out before us, and it was 2,000 euros. And we went around to malls and we asked people, shopping malls, how much can you spend without getting permission from your spouse and still have a marriage?
I love that.
And the answer was $200. So we built a $200 robot.
Wow.
And the Electrolux one was 2,000 euros.
Yeah, so that's out of most people's price range for a vacuum
Yeah.
cleaner. Yeah. And where were the Roombas made?
The Roombas were made in Guangzhou in China.
In China, yeah.
We had previously, one of our other failed business models was building toys, and we'd worked with Hasbro building toys in Guangzhou. So
You had the connection there.
I'd spent a
Yeah.
lot of time there.
Yeah,
Yep.
interesting. And so I'm going to jump to our other inventor down here on the panel. Lonnie, you have such a fascinating career that included winning a high school science fair for building a robot, going with the robot theme, studying mechanical engineering as an undergrad and nuclear engineering as a grad student. You worked in the US military, you worked as a NASA scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory a couple of times, and you worked for a number of the Department of Energy's national laboratories. And I'm sure I'm leaving some things out. But the thing that the people in this audience would probably want to know about is how did a NASA scientist come up with this idea for a very powerful, very popular water gun called the Super Soaker?
Well, I was trying to solve a different problem. Initially, when I got the idea, I was working on a heat pump that would use water as a working fluid instead of Freon because, there's an expression, need is the mother of invention. So I thought that if I could solve a significant problem like eliminating ozone from refrigeration systems, so that because ozone was destroying the environment, and I was thinking what could be better as a working fluid than water. So I was doing these experiments to use water in a heat pump, and I machined some nozzles. This is in the evenings when I would go home after a day at the office at Jet Propulsion Laboratory working on the Galileo project to Jupiter. In the evenings, I was doing these experiments. I had machined these nozzles, and I had them hooked up to the bathroom sink, and I shot this stream of water across the bathroom, and it was so gratifying that I thought to myself, I had a number of patents at that point, and I was having trouble getting my ideas, investors for my ideas, and I thought a toy would be something that would really be simple and easy, people could look at and appreciate. And so I decided to put that project aside and design a high-performance water gun. The task, of course, was to apply some engineering principles. It needed to be able to hold a lot of water, of course. It needed to be able to operate at very high pressure, but yet a small child would need to be able to operate and get it to very high pressure. So, basic principles in hydraulics, force equals pressure times area. So by making the area and diameter of the pump very small, then you could pump it up to very high pressure without using a lot of force. And there were some other engineering principles that went into it, as well as design of the nozzle and the flow through within the gun, so you wouldn't have a lot of pressure drop before you got to the nozzles and things like that. So, but it was an engineering design project at that point.
And then I know that it took a while for you to find the right partner that you wanted to license it to. I mean,
Yeah,
it took, what did you say, 9 years?
It was actually 7 years.
7 years?
I got the idea in '82. It wasn't, and a number of false starts along the way. One company that I was working with literally went bankrupt because of internal problems. The initial idea was to manufacture it myself, but when I went to an injection molding company to try and get the parts made and get it all assembled, at the time I was actually in the Air Force as an Air Force officer, and when he came back with the cost estimate of $200,000 to get the first 1,000 guns off the production line, I thought, well, geez, there clearly some things I don't understand here. So not knowing about tooling amortization and things like that, I felt that there'd be a smarter route to license it. That way I would learn. And of course, all inventors' primary concern is, okay, if I put my idea out there, will someone take it? Well, I was willing to pay the price, take the risk, because what my primary objective was to learn. I want to learn the process and learn things that I didn't know about going into business, because up to that point, all of my jobs, professional jobs, had been with the government, NASA, in the Air Force, and so forth.
So you learned a lot until you find the right partner.
Well,
then when you find it was Laramie, that was the name of the.
Yeah, it was Laramie. I went to Toy Fair in New York, a trade show for toys, and I literally walked the halls looking for someone to talk to and present my gun to. And I met someone on the hall there, in the hallway, and told him what I had. And he said, "Well, go talk to the people at Laramie and tell them that Bob Kersey sent you, because getting into the toy showrooms, you needed to be invited in or know someone." And so having that invitation, I was able to go into and speak to the vice president of Laramie. And he said, "I'd be very interested, but I can't look at it now because we're talking to buyers for our products and so forth. But our headquarters is in Philadelphia. If you're in the area, we'd love to see what you have." So as I was getting up to leave, he said, "Oh, by the way, don't make a special trip."
For the thing that you're really passionate about that you want to get made, of course you're going to make a special trip, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It took me a couple of weeks. I didn't have a prototype at that point because the prior one I had made I had not gotten it back from the other company I was working with. So I had to go home, build a whole new one. This is actually the first time I put the water bottle on top, which became a trademark and signature of the gun. And 2 weeks later, I called them up, say, "I'm going to be in your area." And
long story short, it became a huge success for Laramie, and I think you told me that Hasbro bought Laramie mainly because they wanted to get your Super Soaker. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, and it's sold more than $1 billion of retail sales of this water gun.
It's a big number.
Pretty great, yeah. Pretty impressive. I mean, and do you know, was it manufactured in China? Do you know where
it was?
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Spent a lot of time in China. You know, I watched that whole evolution because back then, when we first started, you had to do all the design here in the U.S. and you had to literally make the molds and ship them over, and then you go over and do the first shots because, you know, obviously initial time when you start, things would be wrong. You have to make corrections and all of that. And so it was very, very hands-on. But now, you know, China has evolved to the point where you can call them up and describe what you have and what you want, and they're totally vertically integrated. But we help make all of that happen.
Awesome. You know, it's interesting, Sir Lance, that both of these gentlemen have talked about their products that were manufactured in China. Talk a little bit in your purview of the state of manufacturing in technology in the U.S. today. I mean, where are we now? Where have we come, or where are we headed?
I still think we're an international leader in the space. The ideas that these two gentlemen have come up with, I think, are a result of really what we have in America. We're celebrating our semi-quincentennial, America's 250th, this year. And it's throughout our history. America has innovated not just in product development and design, but our society has innovated itself. So what we have as a result in the United States is this atmosphere for success and encouraging the big thinking that takes place on either side of me. My joke is artificial intelligence is the only kind I have, so I have to do with what I can. But we have this freedom of support, the academic system, best in the world. Just really the ecosystem for developing products is critical. In my space, the regulatory space, I'm finding out now, and over the last 20 years or so, regulation is not able to keep pace with technology. For the first part of the history of our country, it was the reverse. Regulation was always ahead, the technological developments were slow, but now we're on this pace of unbelievable development, and the regulation can't keep up. And the sad part about that is when the regulation can't keep up, regulators get scared.
Yeah.
And then they tend to over-regulate rather than enable. And I use an example of headwinds and tailwinds in public policy discussions. Same amount of energy for a headwind and or a tailwind, but it's misdirected. So if we could direct that regulatory policy at more of a tailwind, we'll get there faster, more efficiently, and it'll be great for the public.
I think you have a comment here.
I'm going to disagree slightly. My current company, we're building robots to go into both factories and warehouses, and the regulatory regulations in the U.S. are much easier to deal with than Europe or Japan or Korea or South America. We're manufacturing our robots in San Jose right now, but this last 18 months, we've been whipsawed by tariffs because we have to get stuff and we have to ship stuff. And so we're going to move our manufacturing to Southeast Asia just so that we can sell in Europe and sell in South America and sell in Asia and just avoid the tariff mess. It's been a real, anyone who's been manufacturing innovatively in the US,
if you
it's been a real killer.
If you didn't have the tariffs, though, the cost of manufacturing these in San Jose would be sustainable otherwise? I mean, I know that's a big if, right, because there are tariffs, but I'm just sort of curious if you had a different leader right now.
We've got the bill of materials without counting the tariffs down to a place where it's a really high margin business. So.
And is it pretty, what's the manufacturing line like? Is it pretty automated, or like how many people are involved?
It's manual.
It's manual.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, you have to get up to really high volumes to make everything automated. Of course, the circuit boards and getting the chips put on that is automated because that's a standard process.
Right,
You have
right.
machines that can do. But the putting the robots together is manual.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, I have a comment as well. As a nuclear engineer, I agree with the thought that regulations need to catch up, need to somehow be in sync with particularly AI. I think when nuclear energy came on the scene, the Atomic Energy Commission was set up, and a lot of regulations and a lot of safeguards were put in place because people were aware of the potential impact that nuclear energy could have on humanity. Here, we're in literally a rat race, a race to the internet, a race to the AI, if you will, and private companies, as a matter of survival, are really cutting corners and moving as swiftly as they can, and regulators are not, I think, to a large extent, not even aware of a lot of the things that are happening. So the impact on humanity could be just as great, but at the same time, we need to be aware and need to have some safeguards put in place so that we don't destroy ourselves.
So you favor some regulation more?
On AI.
I mean, what's the solution?
And even then, the regulation atmosphere. Who's making the regulations? Sometimes people would put regulations in place because of benign and benevolent intent, but they can also be negative intent, and you have to be careful of who actually is benefiting from the regulation. So it really is a complicated space with a lot of potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
And I do think we need to be on top of this, because the impact can be so profound.
Well, even right out in the parking lot, you have the Joby Air Mobility taxi. The FAA is not ready to regulate thousands or hundreds of thousands or a million of those while they're getting off the ground, pardon the pun. Still working on that, but it's one of those examples that right outside in the parking lot, the Jetsons, for those in the audience that may remember that, the Jetsons has now become the reality. Individual air mobility is really a thing of almost the right now, but the scale of that is going to require a sense of regulation to be safe, first and foremost, to make sure that we're all safe about
Yeah, I want to make sure that the airspace is safe. I mean, we've got enough challenges as it is with the airspace sometimes in some places, depending where you are in the country, right?
Even beyond that, AI, with its massive capability that's being brought online, it's the ability to monitor each of our individual lives, and the whole thing about digital currency, digital ID, and all of this. Well, being able to single individuals out based on behavior or some other criteria becomes very, very concerning.
Yeah. We only have a few more minutes left, but I'm interested to hear, maybe, Lonnie, if you could talk just briefly about your current projects, what you're working on now, because it's very different from water guns.
I'm refocused on the environment and energy technology. I've invented an engine that converts heat into electricity, and it's unique in that it can convert low-temperature heat into electricity. It's a new type of engine that has no moving mechanical components. It's all solid state. And the major investor in that company is an oil and gas company that had literally was looking for a solution. They had concluded that just 20% of the abandoned oil wells in the country, those wells where they've gotten all the oil out, but there's low temperature geothermal heat. You go 1 or 2 miles down, it's around 100 to 150 degrees centigrade. If you convert that low temperature heat into power, then just 20% of the abandoned oil wells in the country could supply all the U.S. power needs. And so that's a pretty nice, challenging, ambitious project to take on. So that's one of the things I'm focused on. Solid-state batteries, I started working on those back in 1998 timeframe. When lithium-ion was coming online and people were excited about that, I thought if I got into that, I'd be an also-ran. I'd get eaten alive by the bigger guys. So I was looking to see what would be the next thing, and I found this solid-state battery technology, micro battery technology at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I got a license for that with the idea of scaling it up, coming up with low-cost manufacturing techniques, and leapfrogging the lithium-ion world with solid-state batteries that would hold, in the range of about 3 times the energy of lithium-ion. So instead of 300 miles on a charge, I was thinking in terms of 600, 700, 800 miles on a charge. So the industry has realized now that solid-state batteries is the way to go, and we have developed solid glass electrolyte that we're excited about. And we, over the years, passed on a lot of materials that other companies have launched with. Some have shot very high value on the stock market, but we understand the shortcomings of those materials because we looked at them and passed on. So we're there. The strategy is it's taken a lot longer than I anticipated. If I had known how hard it would be, maybe I wouldn't have taken it on. But there's nothing like a good challenge.
That sounds fascinating. We again, we just a couple more minutes. We are celebrating America's 250th birthday, and I would love to hear from all of you, starting with Rodney. What do you think the United States needs to do to guarantee 250 more years of successful innovation?
Well, systems always change, but there's been a very abrupt change recently in terms of government funding for basic research. And it's been replaced by venture capital funding for what could be the next big thing. And I am worried about that. I'm worried about that many of the things that are the next big thing took decades of government funding to get ready for the next big thing.
Including the internet, right?
Include the internet,
Yeah.
and
Many other things.
modern AI, deep
Right.
learning. That was a 60-year task. So I am worried that applying venture capitalists, and I talk as someone who, my daughter's a venture capitalist, but applying venture capitalist thinking to basic science, I think, is going to cause we will drop behind Europe and China.
Okay.
If we're not funding basic research.
Right. Lance, what are your thoughts?
I think where I started, by fostering a freedom to think, to educate, and give everyone in this country a chance to do what these two gentlemen have done, really is the hallmark for the first 250 and the next millennia of this country. We just shouldn't lose sight of that. Mm-hmm. That is what has made the country great, and the technological developments we've had in the last 25 years or so may even have outstripped all of the technology from the beginning of our country until the year 2000. And I just submit the Artemis isn't a great example. It sent humans further than they've ever been, around and back. We all watched on TV, so it's a fantastic time.
That was very exciting. Lonnie, what's your thoughts on what we need to do for the next 250 years?
I grew up in the 60s, and asking that question, I have to think about my childhood. I grew up in the South, in Mobile, Alabama, and South was segregated at that time. And we've come a long way in terms of the country coming together, and I think that we're facing a time when we're facing more competition from offshore than we've had in the past. We've sort of gotten used to the idea of being the technology center of the world, but China and other countries are, in fact, a lot of the research documents that I see come out of the Middle East, China and other places. And so there's a lot of cutting edge technology coming from those areas. So my thought about this is that we need all hands on deck at a time when I see a lot of divisiveness and pitting some groups against other groups and so forth, even racial groups, ethnic groups, Spanish, Hispanic, Black, marginalizing people, I think, will be very, very self-destructive. We need all hands on deck. We need to focus on bringing the brightest and the best forward.
I like that. I think all of you had some great comments. Thank you so much for your great comments, and I appreciate you all in the audience today. I appreciate this wonderful discussion about your amazing innovations and the policy that goes along with it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm going to be right back. I'm going to be interviewing Harold Hamm from Continental Resources.
Now for a special fireside chat, pioneering American energy resources, please welcome Harold Hamm, founder and chairman emeritus, Continental Resources, and interviewer Carrie A. Dolan, assistant managing editor, Forbes.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our fireside chat here. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to energy visionary Harold Hamm. He is the pioneer of horizontal drilling, also known as fracking, and helped unlock vast shale oil resources across our country. He founded and for many years ran Continental Resources, now the largest privately held oil and gas company in the country. And now he is chairman emeritus of that company today. Forbes recently named Mr. Hamm to one of our 250 greatest innovators and greatest living American innovators, I should say. And that's because of his pioneering use of fracking. He prefers the term, I think, horizontal drilling, maybe, to fracking. And that really transformed the oil industry. Today, the United States is the world's largest oil producer, thanks in part to this drilling technique. So thank you, Mr. Hamm, for joining us today. You achieved tremendous success in the oil business. But first, let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. You grew up, you were the 13th child of sharecroppers in Oklahoma. And you helped pick, I don't know, cotton and tomatoes, and I'm not sure what else along the way. How did you get interested in the energy industry, and what drew you to that?
Well, it was a long road. Certainly started from the bottom, as you said, 13 kids, and I was the last one. So I had a lot of hand-me-downs and things like that. But it was really a wonderful upbringing. We had a great family unit, and we all worked hard, for that family unit. And so we learned, all the work ethics that you can imagine in a family that size. And, also learned all the values from my parents. Had wonderful parents. And so we grew up, a Christian family, going to church and working hard all the rest of the week. And, sometimes we'd start school, for instance, maybe as late as December, after all the cotton was put up.
Because you and your siblings were helping to pick the cotton?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's before machinery, the harvest was in place. So, and wasn't unexpected, to do that. So we pulled bowls, what we called it, up until the first snowfall or Christmas.
Wow.
Whichever came first, and then we'd start school. So that's kind of the norm. And it's a little bit hard to understand, from the way kids are today, but that's what we did.
It teaches you a really good work ethic, right, from a very young age.
Very, very young
Helping
age.
out, pitching in.
Yes, and so anyway, how I got in the energy industry, that's another story, but all in itself. But anyway, luckily I transferred to Enid, Oklahoma, for work in high school. And Enid at that time was going through what we call a boom in the oil and gas industry, and drilling to the Sooner Trend field, which was kind of a new field in northwest Oklahoma. And so I was around oil and gas people, and these folks to me seemed a little bit bigger than life, charismatic. I'd never been around people like that, generous to a fault. And I wanted to be like that. And so anyway, that became my dream. And also a passion of mine was to become an oil finder. I did a thesis in high school, and studied the petroleum industry and a lot of the greats, that had been there. Frank Phillips Petroleum, J. Paul Getty, E.W. Marlin, a lot of the greats in our industry that had done so much for Oklahoma and also for America. And so I wanted to be one of those. I wanted to be an oil finder. And so, in order for me to get involved at all, I had to start from the bottom, and that was the oil field services industry. And so that's where all the work was done in the field for other people, for other operators. And so that was the beginning. And I was able to start a business, but I never forgot that dream. I wanted to be an oil finder. And so I kept that in mind, and I got an idea, and after being in the field and learning all I could from everybody that was around.
And your first business, was that transporting water? What was that?
Yeah, I had water trucks.
Water trucks.
Workover rigs, drilling rigs.
Oh, a bunch of different things, yeah.
And all that. So at one time I had as many as 26 drilling rigs, for instance. So doing all the service work that you can imagine. But anyway, I had an idea geologically that worked out. I drilled a wildcat well and found a little field. And so that kind of let me go to college. I was 10 years out of high school before I could go to college.
Wow.
And so I don't recommend that. You shouldn't try to go make a fortune and go to school. It ought to be the other way around.
You probably felt a little not like you fit in with the rest of the students in university.
Yeah, there was 3 or 4 older people in my class.
Okay.
But we had a wonderful, wonderful professor, and he was an Iranian, by the way. And Alan Baharlu was his name, wonderful professor that really taught me the basics of geology and let me go forward.
Yeah.
And he did a pretty good job. So found a lot of oil since then. But anyway, that's how I got into the business, which started an oil company, as I said, with that find, but the real breakthrough, if you will, was several years later. America, everybody thought was in perpetual decline.
This was what period? This in the 70s or the 80s?
Yeah, in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And particularly in the 80s, America was producing out its reserves, and everybody thought was in what was known as terminal decline.
Right.
There
was going to be no more oil that was going to be.
We found all the oil, wasn't going to be any more, and then, and it had gotten down to about 4.7 million barrels a day.
Right, and just for context, today it's about, 13 million barrels a day?
Right now we're close to 14 million barrels a day. And then everybody thought we was going to be importing natural gas and was building facilities to do that, to be importers. Well, now, of course, that's all been turned around with horizontal drilling.
Right, and so you were one of the first. What made you decide that you were going to take this risk at a time when pretty much everybody was doing vertical drilling, that you wanted to go sideways into the rocks?
Well, with my experience in the drilling business, we began drilling these highly deviated wells underneath cities for stranded gas and stranded oil reserves. And particularly in Oklahoma City, Chickasha, Oklahoma, drilled 16 wells in the city of Enid, Oklahoma, to the IMO gas cap. But along the way, discovered that first of all we could do it, and second of all that when drilling across those reservoirs, you get more production. And so we started looking for the right application for that. How we could find a reservoir that, to try this in. I was able to find that up in North Dakota and in what is known now as the Cedar Hills field.
Okay.
And that was the first ever horizontal oil field in the world.
And did you use your knowledge of geology to try and home in on this field in North Dakota? I mean, was there something that you were looking for, like that the horizontal drilling would work better there?
Right. Basically, was looking for a formation that had oil in place. Number one, and maybe the permeability, the ability to flow the oil was limited with lack of porosity or permeability, but oil was there. And so anyway, Cedar Hills was a field that we thought would work in, and so went in to try that. And nobody else at that time, everybody thought it was foolish. Nobody wanted to particularly do that. In fact, there's a lot of operators up there in that area, and we thought, well, there'd be a lot of competition. Turned out there was only one other company that ever drilled another well in that field besides us.
Wow.
Nobody wanted to try it. Everybody thought it was a money pit, and so they wanted to try it. Well, needless to say, it turned out very well. This field made about 250 million barrels of oil, and so it was quite significant for Continental, and really put us on the map. But it also taught us that we began looking for other fields. Okay, this works.
Yeah.
So how can we expand this? And so we expanded in an area that is known as the Bakken Formation and North Dakota and Montana. And I see people nodding their heads. They've heard about it because it became a huge field, and was really the first field ever to prove that the shales themselves would produce. So the shales, that's the source rock.
Yeah.
That's the source rock for oil and gas. That's where oil is sourced, and natural gas. And so we could go to the source beds themselves and produce it, and prove that shale would be a productive.
Over the years, there have definitely been some people who have leveled lots of criticisms of fracking. They say it could, hurt the water and all kinds of other environmental damage. What's your response to that kind of criticism?
Well, we had a lot of there was a lot of critics, particularly around fossil fuels, period.
Yeah.
And they thought it was going to ruin the world, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of narrative that was negative. Well, it's proven out that that's not the case at all. I mean, the cleanest burning fuel is natural gas.
Yeah.
And it's the best on the environment. When you made the swap over from coal, and that's what was providing electricity for the U.S., just to natural gas, immediately you lower emissions here in the U.S. by 40%. So, I mean, all of a sudden it opened the door to, wow, that's not a bad thing at all. This is a great thing.
But I'm curious, just as an oil and gas person, how do you feel about solar and wind? I'm just kind of curious. Like, do you think there's a role for those in the energy economy?
I sure do. I think there's a role for it. California, obviously, you got a lot of sunshine. That works good. New York, Illinois, it doesn't work so good.
Right.
Hardly ever see the sun. And some states you got a lot of wind. Oklahoma's got a lot of wind.
Yeah.
Texas got a lot of wind. Okay, good. Put your windmills there, out there in the plains where some of us see it, but they still don't look very good.
No, they're not always the most fun.
Messed up the sunsets and all, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, but is there a place for it? You ask, is there a place for it? Yes. But you don't need it everywhere, and you can't use it everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
So certainly they've got a mix, and that mix is okay. It goes into it. But in order to do the big jobs today, driving AI, you need something that is constant.
You need a reliable energy source. Yeah.
100%, day, night, Sunday. That never quits. And the preferred fuel of choice is natural gas.
Yeah.
And so,
what's your thinking? Like, what is the future of natural gas production in the United States look like? How would you
Well, as a
forecast that?
geologist, natural gas is ubiquitous.
Yeah.
It's happening. It's everywhere. And so it's something that for the next 100 years, we have enough supply of natural gas for the next 100 years. Now that's great, isn't
Yeah.
it?
I mean, we talked about this a little bit before you came on stage, but looking at what's going on in the geopolitics of today, with especially what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz and restricting the movement of ships with oil through that strait, what do you think? What goes through your mind when you think about where America is today with energy policy and energy production?
Well, obviously, with what we've done with horizontal drilling in the U.S., we've changed the world. And today,
In the sense that we used to be an energy importer, and now we're exporting.
right, we
Right.
were dependent
Yeah.
on the Middle East.
Yeah, I remember I was a
lines.
kid when there were gas lines and you had to buy gas depending on the license plate every other day, and the long lines at the gas stations in the 1970s. Yeah.
Early on, we could see the great potential of horizontal drilling and said that, we could become energy independent
Yeah.
and wouldn't need the Middle East and those supplies. And everybody said, gosh, crazy. Can't believe that. That's exactly what's happened.
Yeah.
So we're totally energy independent. We're a net exporter of both oil and gas. And so even though it's bottlenecked up and starving Japan, it's starving Europe, it's starving a lot of places for energy, we're okay.
Yeah. We're just paying more for gas than we were a couple months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Especially here in California.
I really don't feel too bad. These folks are driving down the road with a $80,000 F-150 and we're in about $4 gas. There's something wrong with that picture in my mind. So anyway, it's all relative.
Yeah.
But we have ample supplies of both. So, and you asked what I thought about the future. I think, we've changed the world up to this point, and I think we can change it further. I think we need to start looking at energy hemispherically, and what's available here in the Western Hemisphere, instead of worrying about the Eastern Hemisphere.
And by that, do you mean like we need to look at kind of cooperating with other countries in our hemisphere? When you say looking at it hemispherically, what exactly like?
Sure.
Yeah.
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 In South America, for instance,
Yeah.
what's going on there? Huge find in Guyana. Other huge finds of the work we're doing in Argentina. So there's a lot of energy in this hemisphere. And it's there, and it's, we can make...
And you think we can like
harvest.
cooperate with the oil companies in the other countries, or if you have U.S. companies going down there and doing the exploration, that can benefit both where you're getting the oil and gas and the consumers throughout the hemisphere?
Right, we'd have to be dealing with, countries there. Venezuela comes to mind right now. That they're once again open for business. Have to go about it differently than before.
Yeah.
And I think this administration and others will follow suit that wants to go about that differently.
Do you expect that there'll be a lot of innovations? Maybe something will be some other innovation as important as fracking going forward in energy. I mean, it's sort of hard to predict the future, but what does our country need to do to make sure that going forward the next 250 years we have innovation in the energy sector?
There will be. Will it be as world-changing as horizontal drilling? May not be.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't completely say it wouldn't be.
But the other thing that you might see is, solar prices have come way down, battery storage may be improving. Like you might see more of a portfolio mix where you still have oil and gas, but you have more other options as well. Could be one other development.
You
right?
can, I think probably the percentage is not going to change a whole lot.
Oh, you don't expect that?
I don't,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you look back and 50 years ago was using 85% fossil fuels in the energy mix, and today you're 83 or 4.
Yeah. You do have one thing you do see, especially in the Bay Area. You see a lot of electric cars on the road, right?
There is.
I don't know
there
how
is.
many you see in Oklahoma, but
Not many.
yeah. the Teslas are really popular here. Yeah. I mean, which is, you know, when gas prices are high, you're happy to have an electric vehicle to be driving around. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how energy use evolves going forward.
Yeah, it's been different here. I think that California really shot itself in the foot on energy.
In what sense?
You know, basically decide that we're going to swap over regardless, and so they made their mind up to it. But you know, when you look at the amount of tax, state tax on a gallon of gasoline, you know, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, all you need to do is go to another state like Louisiana and see how much less gas is there than here to see the difference. And
Yeah,
I think it's a mixture of refining and the taxes.
well, in
We're paying a
Oklahoma,
lot more. Yeah.
Oklahoma, our gas is $3.57.
Yeah, that's about what I saw in Louisiana recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we're paying a lot here. Yeah.
A lot of difference.
On that cheery note, we are out of time, but I know I feel like we could have gone for another 20 minutes. Thank you, Harold Ham, for your insight on energy, all things energy, and for your insight in what led you to do the horizontal drilling, AKA fracking. It's a great innovation.
I'm glad to be here at this fabulous event with you, Carrie. So,
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. All right.
Now for our panel, can social media be a public good or good at all? Please welcome to the stage Katarina Fake, co-founder Flickr and investor. Chad Hurley, co-founder YouTube and founder and CEO ITEL. Andrew Weinreich, founder 6degrees.com and serial tech entrepreneur. And moderator Anna Tong, senior writer, Forbes.
All right.
Thank you so much for being with us here today. I'm very excited to be moderating this panel with these 3 social media pioneers. I'd love to start first with quick intros. So I'd love to hear your background, particularly as it relates to invention of social media. Maybe Katarina to start.
Well, I am the co-founder of Flickr, as previously mentioned. I have been very involved in online community and social media since the very get-go. I was an early blogger, and subsequent to that, I actually built a lot of platforms. And I was, I think, like the 3rd or 4th person at Etsy, and the chairman of Etsy as well, and worked very closely with Kickstarter. So platforms for creativity.
Chad.
All right, my name is Chad Hurley. I'm the co-founder and previous CEO of YouTube. Now currently the founder and CEO of a new company called ITEL. I like to democratize creation and help the world create, and looking forward to being here.
Thank you. Andrew.
Andrew Weinreich. I launched what was the very first social network called 6 Degrees. We were the first ones to get people to upload their Rolodexes and figure out who do you know through the people that are part of your Rolodex. And then a number of other startups, location-based mobile dating service, a mobile CRM, behavioral analytics business. I like to think about what are big changes that are ahead and try to get involved in startups that I think represent some type of inevitability.
I know y'all are inventors, so just curious, what particular aspects of social media are you responsible for inventing?
Well, so Flickr was very pioneering in this regard. Flickr had what I believe was the first reverse chronological feed, and it was kind of like a kind of a big melting pot of a whole bunch of features that we now take for granted on the internet. The ability to follow people rather than just kind of mutually connecting and making friends. Flickr also innovated tagging, adding metadata to photos. The list goes on. We kind of were one of the pioneering companies in building open APIs as well. So there's a lot.
Chad?
Well, at YouTube, I mean, I don't know, it's funny that I'm here because I don't necessarily consider YouTube social media.
Interesting, okay.
I consider media. I mean, what we're able to do is, again, like I mentioned in my intro, democratize creation. And then what happens on the site is a lot of people consume. It's not about connecting necessarily. I mean, yes, you can subscribe or follow, but it's about finding interests. But beyond that, I think what it was able to do is allow everyone to participate in the process. Because before, there were the gatekeepers, the studios, the networks, the only ones that had the ability to really touch the world through video. So that's what we enabled for them. In the same way, we're kind of following in the footsteps of Flickr that did that for photos. That inspired us to see what we could do with video. And then, happy that we're able to create sort of not just consider it a catalog, a library of knowledge and entertainment that's accessible to everyone.
6 Degrees was very much about networking. We used to say your second degree is your first degree squared. If you know 400 people, and they each know 400 people, barring overlaps, that's 160,000 people in your second degree. And so we were very much about this idea that the cornerstone of community was being transparent with who you knew, and that was represented as your contact list. And if those people were also transparent with who they knew, then the community was a function of how you connected through your contacts and your contacts' contacts. And that was we wrote the original patent on what we called a social network.
So I want to do a tough question. So my question is, are we better or worse off today because of social media? And my request is to answer this in one word. And then we can talk about it after. So, Katerina.
Oh, thanks. My one word would be depends.
Oh, okay, all right. You're outsmarting me.
Okay, let's see, my one word answer would be better.
Okay.
I would say it's nuanced, but worse.
Worse. Okay, I love it. Three different answers.
Okay, good.
All right, let's discuss. Yeah.
Discuss.
Yeah, depends.
So depends. So I think everybody has seen the harms that can be done by social media. I mean, there was recently that Julie Angwin article in New York Times saying Meta is dying and not a moment too soon, or whatever the title was. It had some kind of like congratulatory, like hooray, so end of social media, because we know all of the harms that have happened. I mean, these have been well publicized, and I'd say the three of us like kind of came of age on the internet during this kind of techno-utopian, celebratory, in love with tech era. And I think that's fair to say. And we were very much makers rather than extractors or exploiters, I think, in the very early days of the internet. It had a very different spirit. And then at some point, the evolution changed. It changed into being more kind of extractive in, kind of data harvesting, kind of non-consensual kind of use of your privacy, your data, all of these other kind of exploitive acts that we have seen. And I do not think that necessarily needs to be the way that the social media is built. It's the way it is currently built, but it does not need to be built that way. And there was one line that stood out in Julia Angwin's article, which stood out for me, which is that and I actually think it was in the comments that she had said, the decision has always been to choose profit over decency. And so you don't need to make that choice. That choice does not need to be made.
Okay. Better.
Explaining why it's better. Well, it gave people access, and it gave people an opportunity to participate, like I mentioned before, democratize the creation process and distribution at a global scale. So what that means beyond just access to entertainment is information, and information in terms of helping people learn knowledge, sharing opinions, thoughts, and global events that have a profound effect on society and global outcomes in terms of elections and other issues that would arise that otherwise would have to go through the traditional filters. Now it can be directly communicated. So to me, I think that we always talk about the negative effects. Yes, there were and are negative effects. I think they can be addressed. And I think we're on the eve of that with AI in a way. It's going to be able to tackle the scale of moderation and being able to deal with a lot of the things otherwise that were just manual that we had to build at YouTube from day one. We had to review a lot of this content manually, and that's hard to do at scale. So I feel like things are only going to get better from here, while still providing the same amount of access for people to voice their opinions and share their knowledge with the world.
Andrew?
There's so many wonderful things about social media. There's this idea that anyone could be an entrepreneur, and you can all of a sudden find massive distribution that otherwise would have been hard. Thanks to Chad, I'm literally someone who couldn't be a plumber or an electrician, but know how to correct things in my home because I'm able to watch videos on how to do things. But if you were creating a balance sheet and you said, here are all these wonderful opportunities to learn, and here are all these wonderful opportunities to reach out and touch people, that's the good. The bad is the doom scrolling. The bad is the isolation. The bad is the polarization. The bad is, are people more engaged with their neighbors and their community? And are they reading books? And are they learning new things relative to what they would have learned if there was no social media? And I tend to agree with Chad that it's correctable and that it may be a very bright future on the horizon. But if I were to assess, are most people better off or worse off? I would say there's a large universe of people who are enriched by social media. But then there's the larger universe of people that are addicted. And that addiction is probably a net negative.
Have you been thinking about solutions and what those could be?
I think the solutions are varied. Like the polarization is a real problem. And part of that solution is it can be solved with AI, and part of that solution can be solved with governmental regulation. Part of that solution can be solved with the platforms becoming less interested in views and monetization and more interested in the health and the welfare of people. So I don't think there's one solution, but I think it's varied. And something I think is interesting, the same way that food companies, pushed out everything salt, sugar, and like all the crap you could possibly eat, and ultimately that was bad for business. I think over time, the tech companies will come to the same realization that part of what is being done is bad for business from a much longer term perspective.
Yeah, and Katerina, you were also talking about decency and whether or not
Yes.
platforms can act decently. And I'm wondering what you think the solutions are. Do you think this is a market issue? Like, Andrew's saying that maybe it's a market issue.
I mean, all of those things are true. And, all the things that Andrew was kind of mentioning, kind of the regulation, deprioritizing, monetization over human decency, I think is kind of a big part of it. And I actually think from the get-go, it was very possible to build civilized society, like kind of interactions and platforms. Really, a lot of that has to do really with the ethos of the founding team. I wrote an article for Wired magazine many years ago, in which I kind of described how the founders influenced the values and the mores that that manifests itself in the software. So when you look at Facebook and you look at Meta, really what we're seeing is kind of the values that kind of go through. I mean, they've done all this research that shows that if the founder of the company wears a blue shirt, the preponderance of blue shirts within the company increases. I mean, so everybody starts to behave in a particular way, and it's the same thing with how you build the software. So values are very much built into the software as it is produced within the kind of the organization as well, and what the community values. Like if you have like a chief ethics officer, what you're doing is basically you're removing that responsibility from the rest of the company and putting it in this one department, where I think it's very important for it to be spread throughout the organization and everybody understands what the values are in every little piece in customer service and engineering and design and product. All of that's very important.
Yeah. And Chad, you were talking about how you're excited about how AI can influence social media platforms for the better.
For the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what about all the
Or-
flop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's talk about that. So you think that it can be changed for the better. So can you paint us a picture
yeah,
of
just
what that
because I
might
was
be?
mentioning, I think things can be done at scale. Before it was just hard to moderate that amount of content coming
Yeah.
into the system, and being able to intelligently understand how to deal with it. AI is going to help people like these systems, these networks do it at scale. And beyond that, to me, I think it's also going to enable human creativity in terms of AI. I mean, you're talking about slop. I think, again, people's idea of the quality they output is based off of what they've seen or consumed within the last year or two. And the rate at which these systems and these models are improving is very dramatic. And I think like the same thing that happened in terms of like people don't talk about it into the music industry. Almost every piece of music that you listen to is produced on a laptop. I mean, there's very few, yes, there's some still live music, but really everything that's produced and created and distributed is basically, a piece of software that has replaced the traditional kind of production methods. And I think the same thing is going to happen within video, where people are now empowered to tell great stories, because before they had to just do one job within a bigger system of the studio, cost lots of money. The studios control the money so they could control the quality of the output. Now the cost of content creation is going to zero. And I think there's so many people in the world that has a story they'd love to tell, never had the opportunity to do. And now with these AI systems, they'll literally have a studio in a box on their laptop. And it's going to enable them to share more and be creative and hopefully touch the world all over again.
And so do you feel that social media platforms should allow AI-generated content on their platforms? And, do you think this will lead to like a healthy,
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's this
future?
debate, but again, the same thing talking about the movie industry.
Yeah.
I mean, special effects are in the majority of the movies out there. They're not labeling movies as special effects, and it's going to become standard. And I think it's sort of like, I guess a losing battle. Kind of say if it's going to be one or the other. It's going to be everything. People are going to create videos and tell stories with either recording it or creating it with AI systems. So for me, I don't think it's one or the other.
So you don't think we should require people to say, like, this was generated with AI or call that out or anything?
I think the systems have really become so good that it's going to be hard to tell. And at the end of the day, it's about the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the word AI slop, so maybe you tell the other side of the story.
Well, there's a really interesting dynamic that's going on right now because of AI, which is this, kind of increased valuation of the human in art, the human hand, the hand in creation, kind of the experience of being present together, as we all are. Actually, this is really great because everyone is here today. And yes, this is also simultaneously being broadcast, I believe, in like a live stream. But I think that kind of with COVID and with kind of technologies like AI, there's this increased valuation of the being together, of the being in person, of the things that are made by kind of like by the human hand.
Yeah.
And while we love all Silicon Valley, I'm also the host of a podcast called "Should This Exist?" And it's a question that's not actually asked that often in Silicon Valley. Can this exist? Like we made this technology. Let's figure out how we can use it and make things out of it. But should this exist is really a question that's not often asked. I think it's a very important question to ask. Is this the future that we want? Is this how we want our children to be raised? Is this really the important way of creating stories. Can we do like, there's this movement in the 90s in the film industry. I'm also on the board of Sundance, and it was called Dogma. And it was basically this really restrictive way of making films without special effects, without special cuts, without even a soundtrack. And some brilliant and incredible films came out of that because constraints actually, in many ways, create creativity.
Andrew, as the worst person, I'm curious what you...
Oh my gosh, you're getting labeled.
Yeah, what you think about AI and its impact on social media.
So I do believe, I mean, the high-level vision that's painted is, with the benefit of AI, we can get better content. And I think that's probably true. And so the real question then becomes, will people prefer the better content to the more deleterious content? And the challenge I have with the analogy with music is, a lot of people tend to be drawn towards more hateful content than optimistic content. And a lot of people tend to be drawn to content that doesn't really enrich their lives. Like, I think about the content I watch, and sometimes I can't remember 3 minutes after I watch something what I was watching. So I do believe that we will have better content with AI. I do love the vision of everyone being supercharged in their ability to tell a story. And I would hope, maybe in a very optimistic way, that people will gravitate towards that better content. I'm not sure it's sufficient to solve the problem I'm talking about, which is, I think these two separate problems. One is just this entirety of wasted time, which I think an enormous number of people suffer from, where they're not really learning. And the other problem is this natural gravitation that people have towards things that are angrier and more polarizing and more hateful. So on the one hand, I'm optimistic about what will be produced, but I don't know whether it'll solve these two sort of lingering endemic problems that I'm describing.
I know you're also a lawyer. Do you foresee any legislative solutions to this issue, or do you think it's more market-based?
I think that's very hard. I mean, I think it's very hard. There are, do I think there should be attempts in some areas of legislation? Yes, but broadly speaking, do I think that there's a magic bullet that's going to solve this with legislation? No.
Anyone else have any thoughts on regulation of social media and whether or not that should happen?
It has been an abysmal failure all the way along. I mean, it does need to happen, but when you go and you kind of watch those tapes of, Zuck at Congress, Zuck,
it's hysterical.
The technology is evolving so fast. It's actually really difficult for legislators to really get their heads around it and understand what's going on. So it's a really difficult problem in a lot of ways.
I want to end on a more positive note.
Yes.
So let's talk about things that we're excited about. So is there a particular product you are really excited about, or a social media innovation that you think will be positive for the future?
So one of the great things about being an entrepreneur, as we all are, actually, is that there's a continual sense of potential and possibility. And I think that was what Andrew was really alluding to when he says, I'm optimistic that we can solve this problem. We can solve this problem. We know how to solve this problem. We can do it. And that's everything about, I mean, this is what makes America great, right? America is this land of opportunity. It's a land of possibility. It's a land of kind of the story that you're told. Every kid, you're told you can do what you hope to do. You just have to just find the opportunity to do it. And so, are these problems solvable? Yes, they are very solvable, and I think we can do it.
My turn?
Yeah. Anything you're excited about?
Well, I guess I could give a shameless plug for my new company, iTel.
Okay. Is it social media related?
I guess if you want to consider media social media, yes.
Okay.
I mean, again, it's just, I feel there's a lot of people that want to create but don't know how to create or what to create. And again, going to AI, AI is going to provide the structure for them to create more and to tell stories more effectively, and to do that in a collaborative way that everyone can participate. So I'm optimistic about what we're creating. I think we are, in a way, I mean, at YouTube, I was fortunate that we democratized distribution. That's what I consider what we did there. With ITEL, I aim to democratize creation. And the cool thing about doing that with AI is not only providing the structure, we know how it's made, so that makes what we're making much different than YouTube, which is a static video. These assets that are created within our system are reusable. They're interactive. What I describe as living media. So it helps you create locations and scenes. And again, those characters within your story can become reusable by other people in the community, and also interactive in terms of, because it knows the character development, the character description, and it is a way that you can not just watch something, but interact with it.
I think that's a lot to be optimistic about. One of the things I'm optimistic about is if you were starting a company 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you thought about, well, how do I find engineers and designers? And so the universe of people that was creating content was dramatically smaller. And now, people I know, that were having difficulty figuring out how to update their operating system are building websites. And they have the ability to publish and to speak and to offer their perspective on the world. And so that dramatic expansion of the universe of people that can publish because of the LLMs, I think is something to be very optimistic about.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all here for being with us here today. It's an honor to be talking to three pioneering folks in social media. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right.
Now for a special Ultimate Bot Spotlight, please welcome Xenia Bulatov, CEO, Ultimate Fighting Bots.
Hello, everyone. My name is Xenia. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Ultimate Bots. A few years ago, an idea of robots competing in arenas or performing on stage would have been a science fiction. And today, it's a reality. At Ultimate Bots, we're building the world's first humanoid robot sports league, where teams program and pilot robots competing across disciplines, including martial arts, dancing, and soon many more. We started as an experiment in the basement of San Francisco 9 months ago. And since then, we've done 6 big shows in Los Angeles, Las Vegas. Our pilots were famous content creators, athletes, and artists. We fascinated millions of people online. And why now? We live in the extraordinary times. Robotics is now transitioning from labs and factory floors into public spaces, workplaces, and soon our homes. Robotics is bound to be the biggest consumer tech category ever. And with that, an important question comes to mind. How do we shape this technology responsibly, openly, and in a way that is actually embraced by society? And we believe that competitive sport is the answer. That's why we created Ultimate Bots. There are 3 ways in which we help advance consumer robotics. First, sports create standards. What Formula 1 did for automotive industry is now needed for robotics. At Ultimate Bots arenas, we pressure test robots and make them more reliable and safe through continuous research and development. Second, physical AI, the brain behind the robots, is a young and fast-evolving space. There are constant new models, training approaches, and architectures, but no common framework for evaluation. And at Ultimate Bots, we provide a live testbed for physical AI that is challenged across motion, coordination, and interaction. But it's not only about technology. For robotics to truly integrate into society, we need cultural adoption. People need to feel inspired, curious, and emotionally connected. And we need new stories, new heroes, and the new ways for people to build that relationship with machine that is beyond fear and abstraction. That's why Ultimate Bots exist. And now, it's never been easier to build in robotics. At Ultimate Bots, we launched a tool called Ultimate Bot Studio that allows anyone, including you, to train a humanoid motion. You just take a video of yourself moving in a space, dancing or showing something, upload on our website, and then you can see this robot moving in simulation. And ultimately, we can drive the same motion on a real robot. We're showing the demo of that at our booth just by the entrance, so stop by and check it out. We're also excited to announce the launch of Season 1 of Ultimate Bots that is powered by Nibius, the ultimate physical AI cloud. The moves that you will see on stage tonight and over there as well are trained on Nibius Cloud. And throughout the Season 1, we will host 3 big events here in San Francisco Bay Area this summer. So if you would like to attend, or if you want to join the league and start building in robotics, please check our website or come find us at our booth and talk to us. And now, to give you a little glimpse of what we build at Ultimate Bots, one of our teams, and Cricket, has prepared a little dance for you. So without further ado, please give it up for Cricket. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Forbes, for having us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.